Senator from North Carolina.
Madam President, I would like to use up to 5 minutes of Senator DeMint's time to continue my remarks as it relates to Ms. Kagan, and I would ask unanimous consent that my remarks be structured in the official record so they were not interrupted.
Without objection.
Where I left off, Madam President, was on the Second Amendment when Ms. Kagan wrote that the petitioner's sole contention is that the District of Columbia's firearms statutes violate his constitutional rights to keep and bear arms, and then said, "I'm not sympathetic." That was her remarks to Justice Thurgood Marshall. Ms. Kagan also worked on several anti-Second Amendment initiatives in the Clinton administration. She worked on the Clinton administration's response to the '97 decision striking down parts of the Brady Handbill law. The court there said that Congress could not command state and local chiefs, law officers, to conduct federal background checks on handgun purchasers. She considered such proposals as outlawing the sale of handguns, where a chief law enforcement officer was unavailable or unwilling to conduct a background check, and also suggested that President Clinton issue an executive order to do the same. She co-authored 2 policy memos advocating for events and gun control proposals, including legislation requiring background checks for all secondary market gun purchases, a gun tracing initiative, a new law holding adults liable for giving children easy access to guns, and a call for a new gun designed that can only be shot by its authorized adult. She drafted an executive order restricting the importation of dozens of semi-assault rifles that had been considered sporting and importable under the 1994 assault weapons ban. One of her colleagues in the White House described the plan by saying, and I quote, "We are taking the law and bending it as far as we can to capture a whole new class of guns," unquote. She also worked on an effort to allow background check information from lawful states to be retained by law enforcement, and a member of her staff wrote, and I quote, "The longer we keep records, even days and weeks, the more useful it will be in the overall law enforcement tool." This is, of course, exactly what gunners don't want. Gunners, new word. On partial birth abortion and taxpayer-funded abortions, Ms. Kagan also has a history of far-left advocacy of abortion issues, skewing even her legal judgments based upon personal politics. When she was working for Justice Marshall, she urged him to vote to deny review of a lower court decision holding that prison inmates had a constitutional right to taxpayer-funded elective abortions. And even though she admitted that parts of the decision were ludicrous and that the facts showed no constitutional violation, she called it well-intentioned. She insisted the court should deny review and let this decision stand because she was concerned the court might, I quote, "create some bad law on abortion," unquote. Memos and handwritten notes during her time in the Clinton White House demonstrate that she pushed even the Clinton administration further to the left on the issue. President Clinton at the time had expressed a desire to ban all elective partial birth abortions, to which, as she wrote in a handwritten note to the White House counsel at the time, and I quote, "This is a problem." She was the lead person working on a strategy to ensure that elective partial birth abortion remained available without real restrictions. In one memo, she lays out her plan to support a ban that includes a general health exception that would make the ban largely meaningless. Even when she heard the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists were prepared to issue a statement stating that they could identify no circumstances under which the partial birth procedure would be the only option to save the life or preserve the health of a woman, she continued her fight. In an internal White House memo, she notes that the medical statement, I quote, "would be a disaster," unquote, for the White House's case against partial birth abortion ban. Documents show that she then drafted new language, hedging the original medical judgment, which the organization then published as their own, verbatim. She then authored a memo to President Clinton arguing that his preferred approach without the health exception was unconstitutional and that the groups will go crazy, quote. Of course, in 2003, Congress passed and President Bush signed a law prohibiting partial birth abortion without such a health exception. The Supreme Court upheld that law. Conclusion, Madam President, I'm afraid Ms. Kagan's record demonstrates that she substitutes her own political viewpoints for legal judgment. If confirmed, I believe Ms. Kagan will add to Washington's growing disregard for the Constitution of this country and its limits on government power, instead of protecting against intrusion and government actions as the courts were designed to do. I thank the chair.